Recently, US Speaker meeting with Taiwan's president has given an upsurge of military incursions by the Chinese Defense Forces in Taiwan Strait. A lot of diplomats around the world, including Chinese defense forces, are pointing towards the close relationship that US and Taiwan are portraying through such meetings as a reason behind such incursions or drills. According to the Chinese government, they see such meetings as provocations against them. This is the second time within 8 months of period that the world has observed such incursions by the Chinese side. Hello viewers, today I'm joined with John Dodson, who is the Deputy Secretary of Global Taiwan Institute, which is based in Washington. First of all, a very warm welcome on the channel today. John, recently China initiated a 3-day military exercise by the name of United Sharp Sword. This is the second time within 8 months of period that we have seen such incursions by the Chinese military in the Taiwanese Strait. It has been observed that whenever US and Taiwan are having a meeting on a diplomatic level, then China is initiating such military drills in the region. What is the reason behind it?
Well, the most obvious explanation is that it's a way of levying pressure against Taiwan or the government in Taiwan, trying to send the message that the more you do to form closer relations with the U.S., that there will be blowback or repercussions from our end in terms of doing this.
John, my next question is that will USA continue its strategy of ambiguity when it comes to China-Taiwan's issue, as we can't see a strong step or any action taken by US recently on this matter?
Yes and no. I don't see, I think it's unlikely in the near term that you will see official statements from agencies of the executive branch sort of making a formal pledge to pledge a formal defense commitment for Taiwan. Now, as you I'm sure know, President Biden has multiple times over the course of the last couple of years, made explicit statements to the effect that yes, the United States would indeed commit itself to the defense of Taiwan if Taiwan were to come under military attack. When he's done that, the professional bureaucracy has kind of gone behind him a little bit to try to downplay it.
Ukraine, to be clear, sir, U.S. forces, U.S. men and women would defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion.
Yes.
I think that policy is there. Again, whether it's articulated or not, at least under the current administration, that I think the United States would come to defend Taiwan.
So China is not just trying to assert a military dominance in the region, but it's also trying to assert a sea dominance. As recently, Chinese Coast Guard has claimed that they have legal authority to stop and inspect shipping in the area around Taiwan. How will this be interrupting Taiwan's trading with other countries, keeping in mind that how Taiwan is important to the world as it's the world's leading manufacturer of the computer chips?
That will be very interesting to watch. And actually, I think that was the single most interesting thing that came out of this most recent set of military exercises. It's unclear as to whether or not a serious effort will be actually made to enforce it. But as you were alluding to, the Chinese government did make some announcements to the effect that they might begin screening shipping going into Taiwan, as well as placing restrictions possibly on air traffic in the vicinity of Taiwan. Now, those would both be measures very much directly tied with or central to any potential maritime blockade of Taiwan. And it would certainly be, well, I would say if the Chinese government were to actually take concrete steps in that direction and not just make noises about it. And again, it's going to be very interesting, I think, to watch and observe as to what, if anything, they actually tried to do along those lines. It would be both, from one perspective, a sort of a natural progression in the coercive pressure they're levying against Taiwan, as well as a necessary preparation if they were to actually declare and attempt to enforce a blockade, a maritime blockade. Now, it would, of course, also be a dramatic escalatory step in terms of their pressure against Taiwan, and one that would affect not just Taiwan itself, but countries throughout the region.
John, a lot of diplomats around the world are pointing towards the issue that the Taiwanese president meet with the US speaker is the reason behind such military incursions by the Chinese Defense Forces. Is there any different aspect in accordance to you other than the meeting that has happened?
There are other motivations for it as well that might not be quite so obvious. I think there is a domestic political imperative for the Chinese leadership as well. That was particularly true, I think, in the exercises in August of this past year, which were held in the lead up to the 20th Party Congress held in October, in which Xi Jinping was slated to receive and ultimately did receive a third term in office as General Secretary of the Communist Party, and was effectively set up in all likelihood to rule for life. So that was a very important event for the CCP, and certainly for Xi Jinping personally, which would provide another motivation for those exercises. But I think there's also one other sort of more prosaic explanation as well, in that I think the Chinese military, the People's Liberation Army, would probably be ramping up some of this military activity anyway, in order to test out their growing capabilities.
John, is USA in a difficult situation or a confused state of mind when it comes to China-Taiwan's issue? As on one hand, where it wants to recognize the one China policy, on other hand, it wants to keep good relationship with the world's leading manufacturer of computer chip, which is Taiwan. So what can we say about the stand of USA on this situation? Is it the hypocrisy of USA or the diplomacy?
Again, it wouldn't surprise anyone that to hear me say that U.S.-China relations have deteriorated significantly over the last several years, and with that has opened up more space for a closer U.S. relationship with Taiwan. I think if you go back farther in time to some other recent presidential administrations, the Obama administration, and then the Bush administration prior to Obama, I think you would have seen in those administrations, for example, that U.S. engagement with Taiwan, and whether you rate that in terms of unofficial diplomatic contacts, government contacts, or whether you rate that in terms of arms sales to Taiwan, which ones are approved or not approved or held back or whatever, almost by any benchmark. I think if you were to go back in time 10 years, 15 years, you would see a state of affairs in which U.S. engagement with Taiwan was severely constrained out of concern about damaging relations with the PRC.